Everyone, looks like we have most of our members here. So we'll go ahead and get started with roll call. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think we have an issue where other folks cannot unmute themselves. Are you able to address that?
I can. It looks like I can do it one at a time. Did you want me to just allow for everyone?
Yes, please. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. It might take a while, so.
Okay, we'll just allow one more minute for the unmuting, and then we'll go through roll call.
It looks like the members can unmute. Mic on your computer and the video conference on? Like, I can hear echo.
Okay, it looks like the mic now works, but I can't do video. I don't even know if you can hear me now, Abby.
Katie,
Okay.
this is Justin. I can hear you.
Okay.
There is, however, no chat function though.
Yep, that's still off, so. Well, and I think for Sunshine, we have to have mics for members, right? Or I mean, the video for members. So we won't be able to do without that, I believe.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to be late.
No, that's okay. Tara, were you able to adjust for allowing the video for members?
I'm working on the mics right now. Can you not let people in because when people get added, it's alphabetical and then like I'll let them into the lobby and then allow their mic.
Okay.
But I'm still working on the existing list for the mic.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. I guess in the meantime, since it looks like most of the mics are starting to work, we can start with the roll call, and then go from there. So myself, Abby Seitz is here. Vice Chair Katie Rooney.
Here.
Thank you. Tara Lucas is
Here.
here. Robin Shishido is not here today. Next, we have Heidi Hansen-Smith.
I'm here.
Here. Thanks, Heidi. Next, we have Audrey Hidano. Does not look like they're here. Next, Luke Sarvis.
Here.
Here. Great. Thanks, Luke. Next, we have Leah Laramie. Do we have Leah here? We do. Thanks. Thanks, Leah. Next, Shanna Merrifield or Chris Yunker with the Energy Office.
Here.
Great. Thanks, Shanna. Next, with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, do we have Sierra or James here today? Does not look like so. So next, Yamato Saki.
Here.
Great, thanks, Yamato. And then with the County of Hawaii, Jesse Domain.
Here.
Great, thank you. And then Keith Hatcher.
Here.
Thanks, Keith. And then with the County of Maui, Kurt Watanabe. Is Kurt here? Does not look like so. And then next, I believe we have Patty in for Jess Thompson.
Yes, correct. I'm here.
Great, thanks, Patty. Then we have Jean Torres. Do not have Jean here today. And then anyone with Senator Chris Lee's office? No. And then lastly, anyone with Representative Darius Keela's office, Doreen or others? Doreen, do we have you here today?
I'm here. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
sorry.
coming. No problem. Great. We'll appreciate that. And I think before we head into our agenda, just for note-taking purposes, wanted to see if we had any other folks joining us for the call today. If you could either announce, I guess since we don't have the chat right now, if you could just state your name, that would be really helpful. Bev Brody, it looks like.
I am here, and Tommy Noyes is on his way. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and then it looks like we have the chat working now too. Thanks, Bev. We have Sarah Hip with DOH. Ariana with Maui Heal. Poe with HDOT. Kevin Richardson, the Deputy Attorney General. Emma Waters, the Hawaii County Heal. Oh, James Burke.
I'm here.
Great, thank you, James. Appreciate that. Amy Fort Wagner, Highway Federal Administration. Great. And Natasha with HDOT, Leanne with HEAL, and Danielle, House Finance.
Abby, by my count, we have enough for quorum with James showing up. So
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Vice Chair, for counting. So with that, and oh yeah, thank you, Justin, with you, Hero, our guest speaker for today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn to our meeting presentation. Oh, I need to be able to share the screen. Just 1 second.
thanks everybody for being patient. Sorry about the
Yeah.
extra security stuff, but for those of you that weren't on the last call, we had a very concerning security event that impeded the completion of the meeting. So this is the newer system. So thank you. Figured I gave Abby time to work on her side of things. So. Abby, your screen has now gone black though. Uh-oh. Abby, did we lose you entirely?
I just admitted her from the lobby. So I don't know if she left and rejoined.
Yeah, it has that she's like leaving as the admin, but her unverified is still there. I'm not sure. But I don't see the DOT punch bowl on there either. Tara, is there anybody in like the office next door that could maybe help? Because it looks like
Well,
there's
I'm
an
not
issue
sure.
with the DOT punch bowl now. With like the physical, the big screen.
She can call the help number that's next to the phone.
Okay, she just texted me saying I'm trying to get back in. Oh.
Yeah, just
Justin,
admitted her again.
Okay. Justin, are you able to share your screen by any chance with your presentation, just so we don't lose more time?
No, right now it's grayed out. Said only organizers and presenters can share.
Okay.
Okay, she's Abby's in the lobby if someone can let her in.
Yeah, but I think.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm back. All right. Thank you for your patience as we're navigating some new security protocols. The challenge though is that I'm still not able to share my screen. Tara, is there any way to adjust for that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't see an option.
Do you want to share the link with Tara and then maybe she can run them from her side? I'm assuming you can share your screen, right, Tara, or no?
We can see your screen now, whoever
Yeah.
that was. Abby, I think that was yours, maybe?
I can share my screen.
Okay. Abby, were you able to share the link with Tara? Okay, all right, just making sure because you're muted and I was like, if you said something, we didn't hear it.
Yes, so Tara, I just shared the link. If you could share from your screen, that would be appreciated.
Katie, your typing sounds like tap dancing.
I'm sorry. I'll make sure to mute the next time I type stuff.
Is the link in the chat?
I emailed it to you, but I can also send it in the chat right now.
Okay, I didn't get the email yet.
Do we? Oh, I was gonna
It's
say,
also,
we
yeah,
don't
it's
want to
also
do that given the security concerns. But any luck, Tara?
Hi, Abby. I'm not able to view the file, but do you want to allow everybody to share their screen, but then we're unsecuring the meeting?
I gave you access, so you should be able to view it.
No, I'm still not able to view it. It says, sorry, unable to open the file at this time. Please check the address and try again.
I just emailed it to you in a PDF, so if you could open it from there, that would be great.
Okay.
I also emailed you Justin's presentation, but that was a former email, so if you could pull up the the Safe Routes to School presentation, that would be great.
All right. PowerPoint. Woo.
Great. Thanks, Tara. And thank you again, everyone, for your patience. We really really appreciate it. So today we obviously have quite a few items to get through, and that's why we extended the meeting to 11:30. And also with our delay right now, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get through all these items, but we'll see what we can do. So we'll be going through the old business items, approving the draft minutes, as well as reviewing a recent funding request from HDOT. Then we're lucky to have Justin Tyndall, who'll be presenting on pedestrian safety research, and then getting to new business items, one of which is actually a continuation of our discussion from last meeting on the special fund status. Vice Chair Katie Rooney will be providing an update as well as just a forum for us to have a discussion on the upcoming report to the 2026 legislature. And if we have time, we'll then continue on with our regular items around meeting the law's mandate, and always finishing off with updates as well as announcements. So next slide, please, Tara. And you can continue the next slide. So the first on the old business is the approval of draft minutes. So this is the current draft minutes from September 23rd, 2025. And these were posted on the Safe Routes to School website. So wondering if we have, if anyone would like to enter a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Do I hear? Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any questions, objections, or abstentions? Great, hearing none, the September 23rd, 2025 minutes are adopted. Great, thank you all for making that quick. So next slide, please. The second old business item is a recent funding request from HDOT, which was also received. It was received earlier this month, and it was provided as board packet material and posted on the Safe Routes to School website. I was going to hand it over to Tara, but I just wanted to give kind of a quick summary, just so we're all on the same page. The request is for a little bit over 1.2 million for Safe Routes to School program coordination for the remainder of this fiscal year and the upcoming 2 fiscal years for 2027 and 2028, and assumes a part-time equivalent and additional staff time, and as well as fees from a central services surcharge. So Tara, I wanted to hand it over to you. Maybe it makes sense for you to present on the forthcoming slide. I think especially since this request is a little bit different than some of the other funding requests that we've been getting for the Safe Routes to School positions, we thought that we should, have time for the committee to review this and ask questions and just get clarification before we move forward on any vote. So I'll hand it over to you, Tara, and maybe you can explain the next slide and give a little bit more detail about what this funding request includes.
Okay, so the funding request includes staff labor, which is half of my time, and then occasional other staff. And then also non-labor includes like equipment travel, other miscellaneous things. In the past, we've used other to fund the data collection system that the Safe Routes to School National Center had, or make a contribution towards that. And then also there is a 5% central services surcharge on revenues collected for all special funds.
Thanks, Tara. If you could keep on that slide, I want to open it up for committee members. But I guess my first question is just to maybe get since there wasn't really a scope of work included in your request, could you maybe just explain if would this funding go towards work that is in addition to what you're already doing, or essentially would cover just essentially the same scope that you're currently performing? And I think there's also just some general confusion about what the central services, if you could explain that a little bit more. We have some questions about what that covers.
Okay, so for the scope of work, it would just be me doing the existing work that I'm doing now, which is like assisting the advisory committee. We provide some assistance to counties. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to get funds to counties. And then the 5% central services surcharge, I am not sure what that covers. That I think it goes to DAGs, but we have no choice. We have to pay it because it applies to all special funds. It probably is some of the administrative work that they have to collect it.
Okay, Yamato, do you have a follow-up? You might have a follow-up question, it looks like.
Oh, I guess mostly about the staff labor and then any kind of additional equipment, the non-labor. So it seems like this is work that was being done previously, but it was paid, like your time was paid by a different means. Is that correct? And then now you'd like this, your time and the other staff to be paid through the special fund? So it's the same work, but it's just a switch in the source of payment. Is that correct?
Yeah, so similar to, I think, like you and then County of Kauai, we've been using, before the Safe Routes to School special funds are available, we were using federal Safe Routes to School funds. And then these are funds we received from 2005 to 2012. So they're really old funds. But we stopped getting it in 2012. So there's not going to be, any, well, unless there's changes in the law, then we're not going to receive any additional dedicated Safe Routes to School federal funds. So now we're asking to use the state special funds.
Do you have a scope of work for what the halftime, like what kind of assistance the Safe Rescue Coordinator does with the halftime? I think that would be really helpful to know what you do and don't do.
So do you want to write up, or you just want me to provide a summary now?
I think a write-up would be helpful. Just like a breakdown of, the time. Like, are you mostly, because I know your most of your work previously was on dispersing the federal funds. But if there aren't any more federal funds, then where do you see yourself putting most of your time? Is it in supporting this committee, or is it in like policy changes, or I don't know, statewide support?
I think program coordination. So like coordinating between the committee, the counties, anyone else that's necessary. But I mean, if the committee wants to request something written up, we can provide that maybe for the next meeting.
Thanks.
I would like to request write up. Even also like with the printing and publications, like what kind of things we could expect. If that's printing for like statewide Safe Routes to School things, that would be in lieu of county publications, then just so there's not an overlap of what we're all printing.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Yamato. I do think that having a scope written out and also just to have it be consistent with some of the other requests that the committee has been receiving would be really helpful. So thanks for raising that. I think I also saw quite a few people with their hands up, but I think Leah, and then Katie and Patty. I know I had a few comments as well, but I'll let other folks on the committee share. So maybe Leah, do you want to start?
Sure, I was the last to raise my hand. Yeah, I just kind of echoing what Yamato said. Yeah, I'd be interested in like what other as what other staff we're talking about. Like, is that going fiscal staff to help us with crafting or have everything?
Well, so other staff would be, for example, whenever we have a meeting, we need to post it to the state public meetings calendar, and then we need other staff to do that. Anytime there's changes to the website, I'm not doing, another office does it. So things like that. It's a really small amount.
Be helpful to have it all fairly typed out so where you can view.
Okay.
Thanks, Leah. Katie and Patty.
Yeah, Tara, I think like there were also things that like over when I was chair that were just discussed, such as, a lot of the administrative support that the committee is like currently doing, sort of volunteer, the minutes, directing what the website needs to do, the final report, which like over time, I think the committee kind of envisioned having support for that. And that's not in the contract necessarily going forward. And then I think there were other things like the technical support for counties going forward that was identified as something that was sort of needed from the law, but that wasn't really in your job description. If it's based on your current job description, then like how do we address those issues going forward?
So we do provide some technical support. So when counties have problems, they can ask us, but we're not going to do the projects for counties.
Okay, I mean, I guess then understanding the nature of the technical support that's currently provided would be helpful, because I think there was a desire to expand that as sort of like a larger program direction, not just like coordination. And so I guess, you know, what are some of the other options? I think the one thing to sort of flag though for FY 27 and 28 is that at a high level, we sort of only allocated 100 per year per position. And I think that's something that the council the committee has to sort of discuss, since it's above and beyond. Like, right, in the case of Hawaii County, they've put a local match in. And although the Safe Routes to Schools federal funding has lapsed, the Transportation Alternatives Program is still available. So with that in mind, is there a mechanism by which the Safe Routes to Schools money can be made available as a local match for your position under the circumstances? Like similar, I think we're gonna have to put in the same requirement we had with Hawaii County, which is that, you know, it's there, but.
So, as I understand, it's there, but it's just encouraging Hawaii County to apply for other sources. They're not required to apply for anything.
They aren't, but I think the same would apply, right? So is there a way or a mechanism, especially since, like you said, the money hasn't really been allocated since 2012, so the money for your position has been correct? So is that, you know, how does that work? I'm not saying we have to answer that question now, I just think it's part of the questions, so.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is maybe, and just for clarity's sake, is like we're documenting a lot of these questions, and so that, you know, myself and also maybe Vice Chair, we can have these conversations and get guidance from Kevin on, you know, just where we can get clarity, just even around, you know, I think I also need clarity for understanding the use of the Safe Routes to School special funds for, you know, anything for the staffing, you know, beyond the coordinator role. And it's if it can be used for these like non-labor activities, the central services, and etc. And as Katie mentioned, you know, originally was kind of thought that the budget was 100 per year. So I know in general there was a few questions in the chat as well as around the basically who determines the pay raises. So that might be another question that we need addressed, Tara. But
Can you restate that? You want
there
to
was
know how we'll pay for everything over 100,000?
I think there's just a question around who determines the salary, and if this is for if the salary that you have included here is for half part-time or for full-time.
Well, that's my salary. That's half my time and 60% fringe.
Okay. Patty, alternate Patty, then James.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate too, I think a scope of work and a little bit more information about some of these line items would be really helpful in determining how we move forward. I do have some questions on the 5% central services fee. I see in the letter of request that it's equal to 5% of fiscal year revenues. And so I'm wondering, and maybe I've missed this because I'm not a full member of the committee, but what revenues are we looking at here? Just because this number is a lot larger than everything else on the page, and so I'm wondering what we're basing that 5% on.
Oh, we were always since 2012, we were collecting surcharges on certain violations. And that's been generating about $400,000 a year. We're anticipating that collecting about 6 million per year because a $5 fee was added to each vehicle registration. There's two more sources, one for parking too close to crosswalk. I can't remember what the other one was. Oh, parking a handicap stall. But we're not, I mean, we expect those to be small. So we're expecting about 6.4 million revenues per year with existing revenue sources. FY26 is smaller because counties are not required to collect the registration surcharge for the whole year.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patty. And I think we'll turn to James. Then we'll likely need to move on. But I think if you do have questions, please make sure please make sure to at least get them in the chat so we can have them documented.
So I actually had the same question that Patty had, and it was sort of answered, but I'm actually curious as to why we're seeing this in this request for labor when we have it in, and there's an entire budget and this is, it almost seems that we're getting it piecemeal, which is fine, but just needs some explanation as how we're going to see this in the future rather than each item is, I'd rather see things in a total package for all the projects, for all the work, for all the staff, for everyone, and not just one here, one there. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but it would be better if it was comprehensive. But I get it. I understand where we are right now, and thank you very much.
Tara, did you have any response or anything else to add to that?
So as I understand, the committee is requesting a write-up with the scope of work by the next meeting?
Yes, and I think also related is the support that the additional staff and other non-labor deliverables. So I think, yeah, we can coordinate offline about that. I think there's also just some general questions that would be helpful to get answered, maybe through others at DOT about the central services charge and what the St. Francis School Special Fund has the authority to cover. So that's something I think we should maybe talk have discussions offline to kind of get more details about that. But it does sound like there is a good consensus from the committee that they would like to have scope to see a scope of work for the next meeting. So thank you all for sharing your feedback there. Really appreciate taking time to go through and review that. Again, I think, we're in this learning process of trying to understand what these funding requests look like and trying to get to, having more robust process in place. So I think having document all these questions is really helpful. So with that, we'll next turn to our guest speaker, Justin Tyndall. We're really lucky to have him. He's with UHERO at the university. He does a lot of really great research, both on the housing front as well as transportation, particularly pedestrian safety and the role of large vehicles in safety trends here locally. So with that, I'm going to ask Tara, if you could, as I sent the email earlier with Justin's presentation, if you could please go ahead and share his slide deck, and I'll hand it over to Justin.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And that was a nice introduction. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a paper related to pedestrian safety, and particularly the growing size of vehicles and the threat they pose to pedestrians, and particularly children. I see my share screen link is now available. I don't know if I'm able to share from my end.
That's a positive development. So I think you can, if that's okay, you can go ahead and share from your screen. That's probably the easiest. You can advance the slides. I can also pull it up if you need. Just let me know.
Yeah, sorry, it doesn't seem to be working. Some security message popped up.
Oh. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, it's a little small. Maybe if you close out of the bookmarks tab or something, it'll.
There we go.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, feel free, Justin, just to let me know when to advance.
Okay. It just disappeared on my end, but.
Oh, okay.
Not sure if that's for everyone.
Is that?
Yeah, I just see the gallery right now, but.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, we'll keep it there.
Actually, I could see it, but it's, oh, now we're good. Okay, it was blurry for a second. Okay, you can, yeah, go to the next slide. Great, so, I already got the introduction, so this is me. So I work at UHERO, urban economist, focused on different urban policy issues. I do quite a bit of stuff on housing policy, but, my first love was transportation. So I have a bunch of research on transportation issues, particularly around pedestrian safety. You can go to the next slide. So I decided to talk about this paper today. So, I scaled this down from a 90-minute presentation. Hopefully I'll do a tight 13 minutes. At the end of the presentation that I think will get shared out, there's links to all of these papers and stuff if people are interested in a deeper dive. But this paper was about the effect of increased vehicle sizes. So, I think we probably all witnessed the trend of larger and larger vehicles on streets, across the US, as well as in Hawaii. So there sort of was an open question about, to what extent do larger vehicles pose a risk for pedestrian safety generally? Due to some sort of data barriers, we didn't have like a very precise answer on that. So the idea of this paper was to try to estimate that pretty precisely, sort of combining data on vehicle sizes and using real-world crash data, looking at the characteristics of vehicles who hit individuals, and then comparing that against the outcomes of pedestrians who are struck. And maybe unsurprisingly, it's a lot worse to get hit by a larger vehicle. But there's some interesting nuances to that story. So you can go to the next slide. So I probably don't need to motivate this too much for this audience, right? So, there's a pretty large pedestrian death crisis, and it's been getting worse across the US. So, the last few years across the US, very high rates of pedestrians dying each year. I think there's a lot of causes for this. One of them, I argue, is the increasing size of vehicles. You can go to the next slide. Hawaii, smaller sample size, so noisier data, but this is, annual pedestrian deaths in Hawaii. The last couple of years, or at least what we're on pace for in 2025, very high level of pedestrians dying each year. Just as a general public health issue, right? So road deaths in general and pedestrian deaths in particular, that's a very if you're otherwise healthy and you might die tomorrow, this is like a very likely cause, right? Is, the harm that we're all exposed to from unsafe roads, has a very large death toll in the state, and the number of pedestrians killed as a poor proportion of road deaths in Hawaii is quite high compared to other places. Let's go to the next slide. So this is just a dot map of road deaths on Oahu. You can maybe skip these a little. So go to the next slide. Zooming in, this is from a dashboard that I have a link to at the end. So this is just plotting, the official data on road deaths. It covers the whole US. So, the idea was to sort of zoom in on areas that were sort of hotspots that would be, important for interventions. But I think in general terms, this is a problem everywhere across the state, and across Honolulu. It's pretty wide dispersion spatially of the places where people get killed in crashes, including pedestrians. Next slide. It's pretty bad here. If you go to a place like Los Angeles, it's overwhelming, the data, I think, right? Like how many people die from vehicle crashes in urban environments in the US. Next slide. This is just, a zoomed in area of downtown Los Angeles. Every dot, at least one person died, right? So this is it's a war zone in some cities in the US, right? From road deaths. Okay, next slide. So, in this paper, try to zoom in on this particular question, what's the role of expanding vehicle sizes? To what extent do larger vehicles actually result in more pedestrian deaths? So, there's been some prior work, sort of laboratory type stuff. So, driving cars into crash test dummies, or doing, simulations sort of on computers of the impacts of larger vehicles on pedestrians, conditional on getting hit. And the suggestion was, getting hit by a larger vehicle is worse. And, some stuff is focusing on the front end height of vehicles, which is sort of the focus of this paper. Even more so than the weight of the vehicle, what seems to be really important is how high off the ground the front end of the vehicle is, because that determines the point of first contact between the vehicle and the person. Sort of the data challenge here was to combine some data on vehicle sizes with pedestrians to estimate this. Okay, next slide. So, this is just an example of one popular, very large vehicle. So, I think over 80% of vehicles leased and bought in the US now are SUVs or pickup trucks, right? Light trucks. Some US automakers aren't even making sedans anymore. So, this is where we're headed in terms of the sort of median type of vehicle that are on the roads. So, there's important to think about those consequences. Okay, next slide. So just to, this is from the crash data used in the paper. So this is just looking at the characteristics of these vehicles over time. So, over the last 20 years, the typical vehicle on the road in the US is about 10% heavier than it used to be, partially because of this shift towards SUVs in particular. Next slide. Right, so, the weights have gotten a little bit heavier, but what's changed a lot is the composition of the vehicle fleet in terms of the types of vehicles. So we've seen this about 60% increase in the percentage of vehicles that are SUVs. Next slide. But I think what's most interesting is looking at sort of at the end of the distribution. So this is the share of vehicles in the US that are over 2,500 kilograms. So that picture I showed of the Chevy is about 2,500 kilograms. So these are like very large SUVs and pickup trucks. So these used to be basically non-existent on US roads, 20 years ago. And now, they're like 12% of the vehicle fleet are these like really large vehicles, really large pickup trucks and SUVs. Next slide. Okay, so in this paper, I use like a national data set covers about 3,000 real incidents where people were struck by vehicles, both fatal collisions and non-fatal. So about 9% of them were fatal. Yeah, this comes from a national data set. It includes a lot of characteristics on the incident, which I can control for, but what it doesn't include is the size dimensions of vehicles. So there's this Canadian database. For some reason, Canada does record vehicle dimensions. So, I spent a few weeks of my life matching up all of these vehicle makes and models. So then we have both characteristics of the crash as well as the sizes of vehicles. Next slide. So, this is what that data kind of looks like. So I'm able to, thing I'm particularly interested in is in the front end height of the vehicle, which I think is probably important to pedestrian crash outcomes. So for every pedestrian crash in this data set, I know the dimensions of the vehicle who hit the person, including the front end height. Next slide. So, unsurprisingly, the characteristics of SUVs and pickup trucks tend to be a lot larger, and particularly for front end height. So the typical sedan or car is about a meter off the ground and the front end, but for light trucks it's about 30% higher than that, right? And if we look at full size SUVs and pickup trucks, substantially higher off the ground, which means if you're hit by one of them, you'll be struck rather than in the legs or the hip, the torso, or even some of them are tall enough, and particularly for kids, to make first contact with someone's head, and that makes all the difference in these crashes, right? But in terms of survival, right? So walking away with a broken leg versus a fatal collision. Next slide. This is just the comparison across the vehicle categories. So same story. So cars are much lower to the ground than light trucks. Next slide. So before I get to sort of the econometrics, like just off the top, like these are the survival rates from being hit by various classes of vehicles, right? So overall, about 9% of people who are hit by vehicles, in this data set die. But for pickup trucks and full-size SUVs, it's 30 or 40% higher. About 12% of people are killed, whereas cars are more closer to the average. So just in the raw data, there's a relationship between the class of the vehicle and the survivability from the pedestrian's perspective. Next slide. Maybe I'll skip this one, actually. So you go to the next one. So, just in the raw data, it's pretty clear that there's this correlation between pedestrian outcomes and vehicle size. But, that doesn't maybe tell the full story. So potentially, people in larger vehicles, maybe they're driving faster or more aggressively, or there's different characteristics of people who select into those types of vehicles, and that may result in different types of crashes. So, it's hard to say whether it's the size per se. So the analysis of the paper tries to control for all of these things. So the data set has this huge selection of characteristics of driver and pedestrian demographics, vehicle characteristics, as well as sort of characteristics of the crash. So like the local speed limit, whether there was alcohol involved, the time of day, the weather, the location, gender, all of these other things that you can control for. So the idea is to try to create a scenario where we have like two crashes that are the same, right? We're controlling for all of these things, so you can think of them as the same in terms of demographics of the driver and the pedestrian, and the same as in terms of the speed the vehicle was moving, is particularly important. and the other characteristics of the crash, to then try to isolate the effect of vehicle size on outcomes. So this is the main result. So after we control for these things, this pretty clear pattern emerges that the survivability of being hit by a car or a light truck is very different. So for full-size SUVs in particular, I estimate your chances of dying, in a similar type crash compared to a car goes up by 100%, right? So you think of the same crash, one involves a car and one involves a full-size SUV, the chances the person dies when they're hit by the full-size SUV is about double, right? So there's this huge effect on the survivability of crashes just based on the type of car that's involved, right? Pickup trucks also bad, but a little bit less bad than the full-size SUVs. Compact SUVs like a Honda CR-V or something like this. Again, not quite as bad as the really big ones, but still much worse than being hit by a car. There aren't that many vans in the data set, so I can't say too much about vans. Seems a little bit worse than getting hit by a car, but a large standard error there. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then this is using this measure of front end height, right? So first comparing the weight of the vehicle. So I find that, in the same sort of regression setup for adding 100 kilograms of weight to a vehicle, the probability of the person dying goes up by about 7%. Okay. And if we sort of want to try to compare it, so you could think of like the 25th to 75th percentile. Yeah, it's sort of a relatively small car versus a relatively big car in terms of weight, right? Your chances of dying goes up by about 35%. Compared to front end height, the effect is actually quite a bit bigger. So just a 10 centimeter increase in the front end height of the vehicle, right? Not very much, relates to a 22% increase in the probability the person dies. If you look at sort of a representative short versus tall front end vehicle, right, the probability of death goes up by about 50%. And interestingly, when you condition on the height of the vehicle, weight turns out to not matter, right? So I think this is like one important contribution of the paper, right? So it's maybe a bit unclear what's the most important, height or weight of the vehicle. And in the data, it seems to be that the weight of the vehicle actually doesn't matter, except to the extent it correlates with the front end height, right? So big SUVs tend to have tall front ends and be very heavy. So to that, in that sense, it's worse to be hit by a heavier vehicle. But the thing that seems to be important is the fact that the front end is really high off the ground. So it makes first contact more likely with the person's, torso or head, which is, what's driving this gap in survivability across these vehicle types. Okay, next slide. Right. So, and this is a bit different across the person being hit by the vehicle. So, yeah, the overall estimate for a 10 centimeter increase in the front end height of the vehicle is a 22% increase in the probability the person dies. For male pedestrians, it's slightly lower. Most victims of pedestrian fatalities are male. For females, it's quite a bit higher, 30% increase in the chance that you die for every 10 centimeter increase in the front end height of the vehicle. For seniors, it's also quite high. And for children, it's like spectacularly high, right? So this is like a huge factor in the probability of a child surviving a collision with a car, right? So just a 10 centimeter increase increases the probability of death for a child by 80%, right? And there's 50, 60 centimeter differences across vehicle varieties, right? So it really seems to be like the thing, other than perhaps the speed the vehicle is going, which is extremely important, that determines whether a child survives. So these vehicles are very dangerous for young people. And this results sort of line up with just the height of humans, right? So being subjected to a much higher grille is much more dangerous if your head is lower, right? Okay, next slide. So these are sort of back of the envelope estimates of how many pedestrians would be saved if we didn't have these giant vehicles on the road, right? So this is trying to say, you know, if we imagine a world where we just magically replaced all the light trucks with cars, this is nationally how many pedestrians would be saved. Sort of back this out with these estimates that I came up with the increased probability of death across these incidents. So depending on what you assume, so the difference in the columns is, you know, maybe you select into you know, maybe aggressive drivers select into big vehicles, right? So actually the vehicle you're driving has some effect on how fast you go. I actually find that people driving large vehicles tend to drive slightly slower, right? Which was a little bit surprising, but like, you know, it's a bit harder to navigate a giant truck through an urban environment. So maybe that's what's going on there. But at any rate, you know, 10 to 16% of pedestrian deaths nationally are an artifact of the fact we have a lot of big light trucks on the road, right? Rather than cars. Okay, next slide. And so then, you know, I can extend that and say, you know, what if we had some law that limited front end height, right? So you can use the sort of same estimates to sort of back out this estimate of, you know, what if we had a law that said, you know, no vehicles can have a front end height above 1.25 meters, which happens to be about the height of a Honda CR-V, right? So this would, you know, apply to about a third of vehicles on the road. You know, nationally, this would reduce pedestrian deaths by about 500, you know, according to these estimates, you know, from 7,000 a year. So you're talking about like 8% of pedestrian deaths would be avoided with this type of regulation. You know, if we were even more aggressive, right, we would get even larger reductions, right? Because, you know, these front end heights have a pretty clear relationship with pedestrian outcomes. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you know, large vehicles are absolutely more deadly for pedestrians and cyclists in the event of a crash. You know, some, you know, policy questions, there's evidence on both sides, but there's no evidence, you know, on the other side, really. So from like laboratory experiments to, you know, simulations to real world data, you know, everyone agrees that, you know, conditional on being struck by a vehicle, getting hit by a larger vehicle is much worse. But, you know, sort of what this paper tries to, you know, focus in on is, you know, what's the exact characteristic of the vehicle that's dangerous. And it seems to be particularly the front end height of vehicles. And I mean, I think that distinction is important, particularly with electrification. You know, electric vehicles tend to be heavier, even if the body design is the same. You know, this research suggests, you know, we shouldn't be too worried about the fact that, you know, electric Honda Civic is heavier than a gasoline powered one. We should be more focused on the fact that the actual dimensions of vehicles are expanding, and particularly the front end height of vehicles tend to be increasing. So, you know, the last point here. So, you know, having said this, you know, we're in a bad place, I think, with the expanding size of vehicles in terms of pedestrian safety. This can make things much worse for road safety. I think it's an incredible challenge, though, to stop this trend. So we've had this trend going on for 20, 30 years of increasing vehicle size. You know, it's really an artifact of sort of national automaker decisions and consumer preferences and lots of other things. You know, even if we had some type of law that limited front end height, we're going to sort of be locked into larger and larger vehicles for, you know, the foreseeable future. So, you know, what do we do about that? You know, I think, you know, very relevant to this committee, right, is to improve infrastructure. So, you know, the stakes have become higher. You know, it used to be, you know, now it's even more deadly to be involved in a pedestrian crash. So I think that calls for, you know, increased investment and attention to infrastructure that would, you know, protect us from these extremely dangerous vehicles, right? I think that would be the policy strategy. Okay, so just at the end here, I just have some links to some other related research that hopefully these slides can get shared out. I have another very related paper about pedestrian deaths. I have a link to this crash map explorer that we have on the UHERO website, and some other papers, one about the effect of street lighting on pedestrian safety, also very important, one about the legacy of highways. You know, having a highway cut through your neighborhood is also a big determinant of pedestrian outcomes. And I have this other report I've worked with some colleagues from Europe about policy, particularly like tax approaches to limiting vehicle size, like registration fees and parking fees and other things that try to discourage large vehicles. Okay, I will stop there. Thanks for listening. I see there's some questions in the chat I haven't paid attention to, but I'm happy to
Great,
answer any
thanks.
questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate that. And I know it's very relevant for our work. We obviously are focused on the infrastructure side. And as you mentioned, that's very important, just given how hard it is to make changes in vehicle size and design. So I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. I think there is just maybe a general question around like what constitute a car, kind of like what is maybe the visual that is used. And I think there was another question, how does the growing presence of large vehicles impact Vision Zero rate of survival? So yeah, if you wanna take those two, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I mean, I just use federal definitions of vehicles. So I just divide consumer vehicles into light trucks versus cars. So, SUVs, pickup trucks, and vans are in the light truck category, and everything else is a car. So for most cases, it's exactly what you'd think. There's a couple crossover SUVs I think you could debate, but for most it's sedans and coupes are what constitute the car category. Sorry, the second question. Yeah, so I mean, I would say, speed is the most important factor, right? So reducing, the speed at which a collision occurs is, extremely predictive of fatality outcomes. I guess this research is sort of above and beyond that, conditional on the speed. What's the survivability based on vehicle size? It goes down a lot, right? So I think, maybe these are the top two characteristics we should focus on when we're trying to, reduce pedestrian deaths. Both very predictive of outcomes for pedestrians. Oh, you're muted, Abby.
You're muted, Abby.
If you could, if you have time for two other questions around where you retrieved your crash data from. And then Laura with HDOT was also curious if there's any states with policies that might be a good fit for Hawaii to model, or either other countries. And is there any federal preemption that limits our action on this issue? If you know
Right.
about that.
So there's the federal database for fatal collisions is excellent, called FARS. But this paper uses it's called CRSS, so a related data set that includes a sample of fatal crashes that's supposed to be representative of the US as a whole. So it's also excellent data, very detailed in terms of the characteristics they include, but is a subsample, so it's a smaller data set. But it's all publicly available from federal websites. Yeah, CRSS is the data set. Sorry, I can't hold multiple questions in my mind, apparently. What was the...
The second question was just if there's any good models around policies for large vehicles.
Right. So I mentioned this policy toolbook I had helped work on. So it's sort of thinking about, what should we focus on in terms of vehicle sizes. So, I mean, there's lots of bad outcomes from having really large vehicles, including pollution and using up lots of road space, as well as safety. So I think when we're thinking about safety, if we wanted to have a direct policy that improves pedestrian outcomes based on vehicle size, we would regulate front end vehicle height, right? So we would have some type of surcharge or discouragement to having vehicles with really high front ends. But I'd be upfront that I think that's probably a good policy. I think a better policy would be to have some type of surcharge like that and then roll that money into infrastructure improvements, because I think it's going to be a long-lived problem that we have large vehicles, and it's not clear people are super sensitive to a $20 surcharge on vehicle size that would shift things dramatically. But it would be shift things a little bit, which would be helpful, and then perhaps that money could be used for infrastructure improvements, which would help defend us against these vehicles. I think in terms of like federal preemption, right? Like I think we're really at the whims of the national vehicle market, right? In terms of what's available. So Hawaii has, I think, little power in determining what vehicle types get sold, right? We can put in some surcharges that might move things on the margin. So I think at the state and local level, it's more about improving infrastructure that guards us against this trend, rather than being able to do too much to reverse the trend. But I think still it's a good policy to try to put in incentives where we can to discourage large vehicles, because they have, in addition to pedestrian safety, so many negative consequences, for society in general.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I think all kudos all around. We're all really thankful for your work that you're doing on this. And I'm personally really interested in all the resources that you shared. And I think we're all trying to figure out how to grapple with this issue and develop policies that work here locally. So we'll definitely make sure to share your presentation and have links for the resources that you shared. So thank you again. So with that, I know that because of our delayed start, we just will not cover all of our agenda items today. And so on our agenda, we did have the update on the Safe Routes to School special fund status. I think just given our limited amount of time, we will need to defer that to next meeting. That may be also just advantageous given that both Robin and Larry from DOT are not here today. And I know that they, we had kind of specific questions for them. So I do think we should probably hold off on that agenda item for the next meeting, just given the amount of discussion that will encourage. But I do know our vice chair put together some slides to provide folks an update on the upcoming report to the legislature. So within our last few minutes here, I will hand it over to the vice chair so she can present on that front.
I did not have the PowerPoint ready because I figured it was in yours. Can you?
Oh, right. Yep, I have.
Okay. All right.
Can you see?
Sure. So if you full screen it and stuff, yeah. Hi everybody. So just as a heads up on the timing, similar to last year, you will get the draft report before the November meeting, and obviously, we might try and get it out in 2 weeks in advance. Is anybody else seeing this click to exit full screen thing? I'm getting a weird one. Oh, okay. Yeah, Abby, something happened where the slideshow didn't work necessarily. And so I just wanted to sort of give you everybody just a quick precursor of what we've discovered. I have about a 90% draft. So we are waiting for some outstanding things from some of the counties in the state in terms of, inputs on the projects that we've funded and a few other things. But the majority of the the report is kind of I've done. So I think given the timing and just, if people have thoughts in advance, it's important to kind of let you have that opportunity. There we go. To chime in, or if there's things, it follows the same structure as last year, which is an executive summary, an introduction. We do a lot more on the committee's activities because we did a lot more this year than last year, about twice as much, if you will. Some key findings, and then priorities and next steps for 2026. Just to reiterate, this isn't the only time you will be able to chime in. It's just to help, if there are things immediately, you can send them to me separately and we can figure out if they're in there or whatever. So next slide. Okay, so I still think it's always really important for us to reiterate the benefits. So a lot of this is in the old. It was one of the key findings in the first part, which is like, it helps keep our keiki safe. They learn, they're active. It helps all of us spend less on transportation, and it all helps all of us stay safe and thrive. Sort of to Justin's point, which I will be adding in the children and their fatalities as a result, but just that high level, sometimes it's kind of important to talk about how like both Safe Routes to Schools helps the kids and helps us. So next slide. But we did have some interesting data that came out over the last year that I thought was worth putting in. There were two different things. One is from the Hawaii Department of UH Manoa has sort of done some research about how like Hawaii residents living in neighborhoods with supportive environments are 20% more likely to walk and bike, and that only 67% of Hawaii residents have those support, which means like 40% aren't. So just, elevating that, because sometimes I think it's really helpful when we have the Hawaii data to kind of bring it to pace. And then for those of you that may recall CJ Johnson, when he was in Justin's position, he actually got some questions put into the Youth Behavioral Survey, which is CDC data that happens. And I was able to get the results from that, but just sort of talking about how many kids and middle schoolers and high schoolers that responded to that survey, and that they estimate like walk or bike to school, that's about 80,000. And that the top reasons for not walking and biking to school are distance. And then the next set of them is all, which was overwhelming. It was kind of like 60 some odd %. But of course, we don't know what that distance is. I will say, as someone who walks regularly, people are shocked to find out that I walk half a mile. So it could be as low as a half a mile, or it could be 17 miles for all I know. And then unsafe conditions around traffic, intersections, neighborhoods, sometimes weather, and others. So we are just going to be pulling some of that. And I'm actually going to add in some of his stuff today too, I think, particularly around the danger to kids, since we had a presentation on it. Okay, next finding. So we still have kind of an abundance of Safe Routes to Schools need. The multimodal network, which is part of the larger Navahine and HDOT, they've released that there's 81 projects costing $28 million. To build out the walking and biking over 5 years. If you sort of take the estimates we've done and you take up the projects we have on our sort of project pipeline, that could still be like another $148 million that's in Safe Routes to Schools areas. We've been getting some additional funding requests from partners, other government agency partners, specifically the MPOs, such as road safety audits and additional planning efforts. And right now, the updated project pipeline prior to the full update, we're still waiting for some responses from some of the partners. It's around 70 million still. So, we have it. It's not all ready to go, though. I think that's one of the things, is that we know that there's things there, but because the pipeline and the funding for these projects hasn't been as robust in the past, the tier 1 we kind of approved was like the first tranche that was ready. And now the next tranche may not be as ready, just as a heads up. So next slide. We continue to meet the legislators' mandate as fast as practicable, but implementation and execution continue to be challenging. Like we've approved the RFQ, we've been entertaining funding requests for the 6 positions, and we've approved $8 million and then another $4 million as funds are available, which essentially taps out HDOT's 2025-2026 budget authority. And I think we're looking forward to doing the same in 2026, 2027. But we did complete all of our 2025 priorities. Sorry, now you can go. Some of the issues, we just haven't always been up on the Sunshine Law, how to do some of this stuff. How and when the special monies can be spent continues to be a challenge. Procurement concerns and delays. We are a volunteer agency and we aren't the ones establishing it, and like how to do that and how to do it transparently and in an accountable way. I think having Kevin join us has really helped the chair figure out how to do this and how to word things. But prior to that, I think we were a little bit, it was a little bit challenging. If you have others, because we have 2 minutes left, please feel free to send them to me separately, or you can provide them as part of your review. Next up. We continue to learn and explore. I think we're trying to institutionalize updates about the Safe Routes to School special fund balances, so we aren't necessarily surprised. Looking at other ways, and some of these are from the past report, like we still haven't figured out how to integrate it into existing planning and project development processes, how to optimize for federal funding sources, bringing DOE more into the process and having their stuff align. Harmonized distances, we have a few different like distances associated with this, and then you know, it's still planned for, some of these are planned for the RFQ process when that gets underway, but you know, how to do direct funding to community-based organizations, particularly I think around Safe Routes to Schools planning. Next slide. I think that's it, right? Oh, we had a few more, sorry. Administrative requirements of the funding distribution, providing technical assistance, improving the project development process, and expanding the list of eligible sponsors. It's quite a list. I think we do have a plan for a lot of these to be addressed during the more formal consultant RFQ process, but again, just kind of keeping that running list, aware of the things that we've learned so that we can use them later in the year. Again, others, if you have them and would like to share them with me, more than happy to integrate them at this time. Well, let me rephrase that. Send me an email. So, all right, next slide. And then, you know, the priorities and next steps for 2026. Right now I have it kind of still in the same plan, people, projects. So support the HDOT when the consultant is onboarded. People continue to encourage, evaluate, and fund Safe Routes Schools positions to complete the robust network we're looking for. Projects as funds become available, improve the evaluation process on an annual basis until the plan consultants kind of give us a more formal one. Request reinstatement of the 10 million from the 2025-2026 to the special fund, and any others, because I think in the last conversation, Robin basically said that that's what we would have to do in order for that money to show up again. So I think we should do that. So I put it in the list. So, okay, we are now officially over. So I'm now done. So again, feel free to send them my way. And if you have anything that you'd like to see in there, you can also wait till the final report, but I wanted to just kind of precursor, and you know, the PowerPoint can be made available, I think, shared after the fact too. So, or at least those slides. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Appreciate that and your very timely summary. It's very impressive. And, you know, since we have hit time, I'll just reiterate that, you know, especially since we lost a few folks towards the end of the meeting, that I'll share out the presentation slide deck and really highlight what Katie put together here on the report to the legislature. And so if you do have thoughts or feedback about any important items that we're missing, to contact Katie as she is leading that front. So before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention our next meeting. Our regular meeting will be on Tuesday, November 18th. We do have a scheduled speaker, Felice and Kimberly from Go Kid Corporation. They are working with the DOE on setting up a pilot program for carpooling at two sites, Mililani and Kekalike. I know that they presented, I think, last year, and so this is kind of just a follow-up to share where they're at on that, which I think will be really great. Are there any just important announcements before we adjourn from the committee or otherwise? Okay, seeing none, we will officially adjourn the meeting at 11:32 a.m. And I hope everyone has a great day, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the upcoming meeting on November 18th.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Aloha.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.